I'd love to dive in and maybe get a little more granular here because so as of a few years ago, Bitcoin was Bitcoin. You would buy it with the idea it was digital golds, and over time it would be money that didn't, get printed, that wasn't inflated, that wasn't controlled by a central bank, and that it might appreciate over time. And for that reason alone, it was good enough for Michael Saylor to put 10 billion in it and good enough for people to hold. And that's amazing. But now, through some of the work that you've done and everyone else, now you can do lots of things on the Bitcoin chain. You can inscribe a non-fungible piece of art, maybe call it an ordinal. You can create a fungible token with maybe a BRC20 protocol. And that's gonna grow onto the Room protocol, and we can talk about that. You can also inscript data on there because censorship is real. We've been censored. And Bitcoin it's a blockchain that's immutable. So imagine putting data in there. Imagine somebody in North Korea being able to send you a message that couldn't be erased. And this is real. I mean, even the Wayback Machine on the internet can be tampered with by the CIA. All these things can be changed, but most people would probably argue you can't really change that immutable chain on the Bitcoin. So you could literally have something that's censorship proof. So I would love to talk about all these things. First, just the non-fungible side of it. Ordinals have just blown up. They seem to be everywhere. There seemed to be a huge demand in China as well. And when the NFT market on OpenSea volumes were down 98% and all the apes were in the toilet and everyone thought this was just a crazy tulip phase, at the same time, in a weird way, ordinals were then coming up. And it was the story of 23. I was at the first Ordinals Summit in Singapore. And the vibe there was wild. I mean, guys are walking around in capes, and everybody said it reminded them of the early Bitcoin get-togethers where people were there just to develop something cool before all the booths came out and all the marketing dollars came out and all the brand sponsorships. It was like a real innovator's kind of paradise. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, what the ordinals were and how it contrasted with, say, some of the NFTs in that movement.
Yeah, so I think I think you've nailed why ordinals are important, really. So I think the so essentially an ordinal is stored into a taproot address, and like you say, it's on Bitcoin. So probably the most uncensorable blockchain in the world, extremely decentralized, governed by a system that kind of a consensus mechanism that everyone understands, and really the data will be on Bitcoin for all of time, right? So or as long as Bitcoin exists, and I think nearly everyone buys into Bitcoin having made that stake into becoming digital gold, right? And I think to my earlier point, it's really important that fee market exists to be able to keep Bitcoin as sort of keep Bitcoin's consensus mechanism working really well. I think the other thing, the NFTs, I think really, really disappointed in some ways, just because when you buy an NFT on Ethereum, it's typically a pointer to somewhere else. There's a handful of projects like Art Blocks or whatever that stored the data directly onto Ethereum, but because of some of the technical constraints on Ethereum, you actually typically an Ethereum NFT was pointing to either something like IPFS or Arweave that the man on the street don't really know, or like even an AWS. So actually they were being guaranteed by Amazon. So you could buy an NFT on Ethereum, think you're using blockchain, but really the image you were buying was stored on this thing that could in theory Amazon could censor it, right? So the and even more funnily, like you had instances like the FTX NFTs, where effectively suddenly one day all the owners of the FTX NFTs got told your NFT is now the property of the US government, which completely undermined the point of this non-fungible thing that would be on a blockchain forever.
Right.
So when you suddenly had ordinals and information, data could be stored onto Bitcoin, it suddenly, this is something much more like in the public consciousness than going, hey, your things on the interplanetary file storage system, like which no one other than like the hardest core techies knows about, right? And so it's I think that really resonated with people, that you had this native on-chain asset that you could trade. And I think we've already seen early use cases that are important. I think I referenced it earlier, but unpacking it, the Julian Assange war records, a group has decided, hey, the CIA and whoever might be wanting to take these down, but we're going to keep this as part of history forever, that people can't tamper with and can't censor. And I think we've brainstormed doing kind of a web-free Huffington Post on ordinals, right? Where you basically we've got a blogging tool, Scribe, and the thinking is like we can partner with various media operations to create something which is just literally free-form content that anyone can share with the world. So I think like those kind of use cases, or like property deeds or ownership, like they actually lend themselves really well to ordinals and Bitcoin. And you could imagine, especially like you say, I mean, the North Korea example also does keep people up at night in terms of like, okay, we've created a system going literally, it's kind of unstoppable, which is the nature of Bitcoin and blockchain. But
to continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.